effective, where you're able to fatigue yourself before then. And the Demon Hunter, if they're playing well, sequencing their quest progressions correct, they should be able to get to the OTK in time.
Yeah, we've seen. I like the way you described it the other day about, you know, play your brutes as a distraction, but we have seen people try to go all in on brutes, and that hasn't been getting. I'm not going to say it never gets there, because they don't have a soul rend. The brutes are going to get there. But if they have got a soul rend, the brutes, no matter how many you play, just get cleared up, and you're left with a deck of not a lot going on. So it's very difficult to time. I do think it is favoured, but this is a matchup. In fact, all of the brute matchups are fiendishly complicated, I think. It's not just as simple as play the cards and draw them and plop them down. At least, not usually. Sometimes it is just that simple.
Big fan of the mulligan, actually, from Nalguidan. Spectral Sight is a really interesting card, I think, with respect to the early game versus the late game, because generally, I would say you don't want to keep it unless it's in like a very good position, as it is here, because you never want to play it until turn 3, and I would rather find the Tusk Piercer or the Sigil more of the time. But given that here, as soon as he finds a tradable or a double jump, he can go Spectral Sight plus 1 cost to complete the first layer of the quest on 3. Glide is guaranteed to be playable on 4 as well, which is the dream against Warlock. It just leads to very, very clean quest progression from Nalguidan, which obviously now diverts once the weapon is in play for his opponent, and the second one is then shortly played afterwards. But the main, the headlines I'm trying to say is I think that Nalguidan had a very clear game plan from turn 1.
Yeah, haha, I got you, oof. Meanwhile, lnguagehackr, if he has a tantrum today, has so many things he can throw around.
Yeah,
I mean, like a library or something. It'd be like something out of Ghostbusters. Oh my goodness, that'd be terrifying. Anyway, Spider Tank in play for Nalguidan. He is completing the quest, trying to reduce some good cards. Getting Glide down to 3 is very tasty going forwards. Allows him to complete part 2 really rapidly if he wants, or allows him to mess with lnguagehackr's reduced hand if he wants to time it right, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, so sometimes you're best off just ignoring it, and progressing your own game plan is what a wise APAC caster has taught me over the last few days.
Indeed. Well, tap tour guide Mortal Coil, it seems fairly simple. The other approach you could obviously take is, if you want to hoard as many cards in hand as possible for these nulls, you could just tap pass. Could just tap Panthara out. That is the way to spend your mana, get this weapon completed next turn whilst keeping your hand as full as possible. Which, even though you're inviting a value trade from the snake, I actually still kind of like.
Yeah, that was sort of what I was looking at as well, weirdly enough, because it's just spending mana nicely. But this also spends mana nicely.
Pretty close, yeah.
And keeps the easy card draw potentially for later in the game is always a thing that's nice in hand lock too.
Yeah, he's at that very nice hand level, right, where Glide, Nalguidan wants to play it to progress his quest, but only discarding 1 card effectively from your opponent's hand is really not that impressive when you know as soon as they play a backfire, you can just completely reset their draw progression and get all those cards back in deck. Which is why I think at least starting off with Guild Trader and then very possibly going Illidari Studies as well is a smart way to go about this.
Yeah, he's going to have a look at the double jump, which is, again, always not what you want to do if you can help it, because it's the reduced card has now gone from your hand if you progress the quest. But he doesn't mind now. He's going to progress some quest.
Yeah, that is the absolute juice. Very well sequenced from Nalguidan, because with the 0 mana Illidari Studies played at the end, he could still have ended up with the 3 mana Glide played from the left-hand side of his hand if he really needed to complete the quest on that turn. And there with Brute off the top as well, it looks like only 1 can be played because he doesn't have any more ways to trade through, which is very irritating. And because there was actually the 1 mana Moarg in hand. I have no idea if he realized he was taking a 50-50 there, but he was to copy Brute or Moarg. And he gets the Moarg, which, honestly, I'm not even sure if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, against Warlock, having extra Moargs is okay to either clear the board or do your combo.
Yeah, it's actually, in a lot of ways, my preference. Either is fine, right? So maybe he just let the gods decide.
Yeah.
Probably not. He probably just thought he was going to reduce it, to be fair. But
does seem that way, yeah.
Either way, lnguagehackr now is in that awkward spot where he has to start spending cards to heal up, but in the lovely spot where any moment now he's going to start just making a massive board and trying to force Nalguidan into having to use Moargs plus spell damage plus removal to not win the game, but just to stay alive.
That's right, and I would say that this is the kind of board that Nalguidan could happily ignore, because it doesn't look like there's going to be too much pressure down. However, with double Raise Dead to bring back a couple more nulls, and I think which allows you to then play Giant on the same turn as well, it's all of a sudden that little bit too big to just be ignoring for another turn. This is now very scary.
Yep, and is it a lethal setup? It's 25. No, it's 28, so it is a lethal setup with the Battle Master in the hand, yeah.
Yeah. It's...
Now Nalguidan, he needs to see how much resources he's willing to put into this, because he's going to need to clear some more stuff next turn, most likely, right?
Yeah, it's so annoying. The 8 health breakpoint is so difficult to get to with with Immolation Aura. He can quite obviously do it with Moarg Immo, but that is a brutally expensive turn, which makes me think that more likely he will just go Moarg, Immolation, and then end with Glide, actually, most likely, just to actually clear enough of the board so that he never dies, and then move towards his own quest progression at the same time, and then try to mop up the rest the turn after.
It's so weird. You spend half of the time in this matchup throwing your Immolation auras away so you don't draw them.
Yeah.
And the other half the time you spend panicking trying to get them to do 8 damage. Like, make your mind up, deck. Which one do you want?
It's a tough one. Okay, Kurtrus in hand. I suppose it makes sense for him to hold on to the Moarg, because he would only really be playing that to kill a 2-1 and deal 2 more damage to the Giant, which is, you know, kind of close. It's debatable, but saving himself the extra mana allows him to play either Tusk Piercer or Double Jump or Sigil after the Glide does come down. The problem is, though, at this point, that it's probably too scary to just play the Kurtrus on the following turn. He might be forced into it if he doesn't have any alternate line, but this is the kind of hand that lnguagehackr needed. It was just rip-roaring fast.
Yeah, I like the way Nalguidan did this personally, though. There's a very good chance he loses this game, and there's a reasonable chance it's because of the play he just made. However, this one, if he gets out of it, he gets out of it in style and comes out the other side with a Kurtrus played and in front and actually can win the game. Whereas the other way, when we're talking about, do you clear that board, then what are you going to do about the 2 nulls? And it just looked like, yeah, you might stay alive a few turns, but you never win the game of Hearthstone. Whereas this one, yeah, you probably die a lot of the time, but maybe just sometimes you actually survive and win the game.
Yeah.
He's not facing lethal damage if his opponent doesn't have Battle Master. That might be a factor here. So he could play Kurtrus and Spectral and just close his eyes.
He is facing lethal damage, right? Because I think it's a tap away from second quest completion for lnguagehackr.
Oh, that'll be fine.
Right, but, you know, you can just take a leap of faith here. This could have been Kurtrus and then the Spectral Sight, because obviously you draw 2 cards that are reduced by 2. That could be Moarg and Immolation Aura. Obviously that doesn't actually clear any of the big threats. And then you would actually still just be exactly dead, because there's 14 damage on board.
It's 3, right? Yeah, it was just slightly too much stuff.
Yeah, and so now it's 1 mana off being able to go Guild Trader Moarg plus the Fellscream Blast, so I think the only option available is Guild Trader Fellscream Blast, as he's going for. It doesn't actually clear any of the big threats off the board, but it means it has to be the Battlegrounds Battle Master off the top to get there. lnguagehackr, with all your many tomes behind you, have you divined a possible win condition from this hand? He's thinking, he's getting there, he's closer, I think he's got it, Neil.
Goodness gracious me, I think he's nailed it. And fair play to lnguagehackr, having a bit of a joke at his own expense of yesterday's stuff. I counted it right, look at me go. Fair play to him. And that's what we like to see. Not if you're a Nalguidan fan, but in terms of Language Hacker's reaction, yeah, okay. Played a solid game, put the right amount of pressure on. And the thing you highlighted most was the interesting thing there. He kept at 5 cards the whole time.
Yeah.
Give or take, which was like, do you glide me? Do you not glide me? And all the time he was still being able to make some pressure happen. So nice work to take that 1-0 lead.
Yeah, it was very nicely done. It was sad for Nalguidan to have drawn... that his opponent drew double weapon, because he obviously deviated from the plan that I was setting out at the start. I think correctly, because the original game plan was on turn 3, you go Spectral Sight and you trade, which means on turn 4 you can play Glide, which means maybe on turn 5 you complete the quest, which could have been Kurtrus 1 turn earlier. Kurtrus was available turn 7, whereas if he'd gone with the original game plan, it could have been Kurtrus on 6, which can be all the difference in the world. At that point, maybe you have that one extra turn to find some big brutes, to get some maybe even just lethal on board on the following turn. But because there was the second weapon as well, it means his deviation away from the expected game plan didn't even pay off. So it was the worst of both worlds for Nalguidan, and even though he made the correct play, it didn't work out for him here.
Yeah, absolutely the correct play as well. When your opponent coins out the weapon, there's only one card you're expecting next turn, and that's Backfire, not another weapon. So you're absolutely hoping to blow that up. But Language Hacker now popularized this deck in conjunction with Monsanto, and we laughed at them. Oh, how we laughed. Look at all these Naught Mana minions. What a joke of a deck. Monsanto won that week, and we stopped laughing because this deck has now just taken over the meta. It's just a fantastic aggro deck with lots of bits and pieces going on, and very difficult for the Demon Hunter. But I know you like this matchup from the Demon Hunter side, Derek, so talk us through.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I've gone about it a couple different ways from the Demon Hunter side. Obviously, my main game plan is to do more or less what Nalguidan's doing here. It's keep card draw, progress the quest, get big brutes online. That's your primary win condition. But there's a couple of actually other pretty funky things that you can do in the matchup, because you don't have to rely purely on a massive immolation aura to clear the board. You can just play Moargs at the start. There's 0 spell damage effects in the Priest deck, so playing a 2-4 or a 3-5 Moarg is very potent at the start. Fellscream Blasts are very effective cards in the mid-game. If you can reduce a Guild Trader down to 3 or a Moarg down to 1 and maybe copy it, that's going to delete most boards from the Shadow Priest. And so even though this hand is currently lacking something from Nalguidan, he really needs a double jump or a tradable next turn to complete the quest. This can get there.
Language Hacker made the same face that I sounded.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, yeah, you don't often come back from these. You can, but needs a crazy pop-off turn. Does the Moarg help him much? Not really.
So I think the game plan is that because Moarg will be reduced if you complete the quest this turn, you, as I said, so often the case with this deck, you take a leap of faith. You play the Spectral Sight and you pray that you get one of your tradables or a double jump. Outside of that, I think you are going to be in some big trouble. The other line you can take is obviously to just go for it right now, which is a lot safer. And, you know, it's pretty good immediately, to be fair. It does slow the opponent down. They very possibly have to hero power if they want to actually clean off this Moarg effectively. But at the same time, it's a much less ambitious play, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean he's that one turn further away from being able to get a big brute turn or a big board clear.
And now he hasn't got a Moarg anymore, so those clears are now less easy to power up.
Much less easy.
And it's something you said there, actually. You said a sort of 2-4 or a 3-5 Moarg, but the 3-5s are so much better in this match. 2-3s are just hard to deal with early on.
Yeah, they value trade almost every minion as well. It's like only freshmen that they can't kill. Okay, that's a decent card to reduce down to 0 just to set up for next turn, but he needs an extra card draw effect first, and he misses. He just needed one card, a tradable, a double jump, a Spectral Sight, anything to be able to draw a card, and he misses. Immolation Aura now doesn't even clear that much off the board.
I don't even know how to play Language Hacker's next turn. You can double Wriggling, plop down another Void Touch. Yeah, you waste a mana, but who cares because you hit them for 1,000,000 damage. I think you double is likely. Oh.
Man, you have short memories over here in the Americas, don't you? Play like absolute doo-doo yesterday and now BMing his opponent. I mean, fair enough, fair enough. I can respect it as well because I think it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek for Language Hacker. Like, it's less you suck and more, okay, you know what? That was actually pretty unlucky. I accept you just got kind of boned on this one.
Yeah, Language Hacker comments a lot on sort of who had the most luck and stuff, so I think he does try to be fair with it. He normally says that it was his opponent, but occasionally when he does get his little tiny glimmers of luck, he does admit to it. Maybe not as often as he could.
And so a pretty powerful draw here, even through the Cult Neophyte effect. We could obviously see Guild Trader Fellscream Blast on this turn in order to be able to clear off a couple of the big minions. He's going with the play of Fellscream Blast first, which is, I think, probably slightly better. It allows him to still have the follow-up of Guild Trader plus the Fellscream Blast. And that's the kind of play that can pull you back into the game, maybe.
Oh, now it's count time. Void Touched and Elusia is only for this turn, but the turn after it is 4, 6, 8, 10, 14, so 18 over the 2 turns.
I agree. Yeah.
Did I add the 14 to the 4 twice there? It's been known.
It's 4, 8, 10, 12.
You can't shoot this turn. It's 15 or 14.
Yeah, I think it's...
But is that enough? That could be enough. Might not get to dump anything depending what your opponent's hand is. It's tough. I think you don't.
I think it's just, Voracious Reader, Wriggling Horror, or Attendant Horror Hero Power, probably.
I actually like Reader Horror, just to have the 2/4. Forget the card draw part of it. It's a 2/4 minion that's actually just irritating.
I mean, you get that this way as well, right? It's still the same stat line. Yeah, he's taking 1 turn off. I think if he came to the same conclusion that we did the math the same, then he came to 15 damage over 2 turns as well.
Right.
And
spell damage in hand. Fellscream in hand.
It doesn't work out for him, does it? For old Language Hacker. It's a full board clear available. It's kind of annoying you actually have to draw the card here because you'd rather condense all that card draw into 1 turn. But you're not really complaining. If he can get 1 more cheap draw effect, that's not it, but it's not bad just to have a sigil for next turn.
Yeah, I mean, this would have happened if Hacker had gone the other way as well. Just like you said, it didn't work out for him. The numbers just weren't there.
Yeah.
And Nalguidan's not out of the woods yet. These glides are really awkward for him.
They are a little awkward, but honestly, I kind of just like the spot that Nalguidan is in now. I think he played this game really expertly. The one thing where I kind of disagreed at the time with going tempo Moog, or Moog plus Fellscream Blast immediately, rather than trying to set up for a bigger Moog clear turn. To be fair, his line was much stronger against Elusia or against a Cult Neophyte on the other side of the board as well. It was just immediately playing your cards rather than trying to build up to a big sweeping board clear, which admittedly is one of the things I often preach you should be doing in this matchup. So to be fair to Nalguidan, I think this was a pretty clean game overall. Far from out of the water yet, obviously, with Gandling, Elusia, plus a 0-mana card on the other side. That may actually just be enough to swing things back in Language Hacker's favor. But no matter how it ends up, I do think Nalguidan can hold his head high after this game. And maybe now the Gandling isn't even enough, because that is double brute on this turn.
Yep. As long as that gets played.
He did just dump Philosophy.
And then there wasn't.
Yeah, earlier on that turn, which I guess was to proc the acrobatics on the second time. So it's annoying that he only gets 2 brutes here instead of 3. But I think that may be enough either way, because with a 1-mana tempo peddler as well to close things out, I'm not even seeing Gandling and Elusia being enough here.
That was a nutty turn. Like you started
awesome.
off discussing how Nalguidan had played so well. Then we looked at lnguagehackr 2 cards that he drew from the reader, and it was like the 2 cards that could win him the game. And while you were describing that part, Nalguidan drew a million cards, somehow didn't rope. It felt like that turn went for like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And got himself 2 brutes in the space of, from the end of one turn to the end of another. The game changed hands like 3 times or something. It was quite amazing.
Well, Moog Immo is pretty big, of course. The deal 3 damage at the bottom on that immolation aura, I believe, is wrong. That's just carrying over from Nalguidan's hand.
Just made up.
But it does mean that you can clear all but a brute, right? Because you can go double trade into one of the brutes, Moog, immolation aura, and hero power face, I guess, to close things out. It's not great, and your opponent gets to play the Gandling on the following turn, but it's the only way you stay.
Or you can do what I think he's going to do, and you play Moog and Aura and see if it works. What? Well, just because it said the 3 damage, and just see if it's a bug, or see if it's actually going to clear the board for you.
I understand. And lnguagehackr, giving it all that halfway through the game. How'd that happen? How'd this happen, mate? You are looking a little bit more flimsy now, as Nalguidan has, well, his pick of pretty powerful plays. I'm guessing you end up going Gandling plus Twilight Deceptor and just let them have a Benedictus, which is obviously a very underwhelming minion at this point of the game. Doesn't come close to digging him out of things. And then you just take all your card draw and win the game as lnguagehackr throws it down. 1 game apiece after a start that I think you, I, and both the players were all assuming would go lnguagehackr's favor.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you described, the very early defense there meant that Elusia just wasn't quite enough to be playable. And yeah, because the cards you could dump are likely undumpable, all the 1-mana cards hurt your board. And yeah, very, very nicely played Nalguidan. This is a player that I was talking about at the start, you know, the one that we didn't see too much of for several years, who is now super strong. I'm sure he'll be insulted when he hears me say, yeah, he wasn't that strong. He was always good. Yeah. But now he's just good and tidy with it. That's the difference. And yeah, gets up to that 1-1. And I think lnguagehackr's looking a lot more comfortable. The last 2 weeks, he's got 2 points and 3 points guaranteed. It's put him in this top 8, just about, on tiebreakers. I think he's just looking far less agitated when things go wrong, mainly because the pressure's off him a little bit.
And here it is, my favourite deck to see in the current metagame. It's Garrote Rogue, and not only is it Garrote Rogue, I believe it's going to be the Mirror, with lnguagehackr having Mankrik here, a card that I don't think we've seen at all, at least on broadcast in the Asia-Pacific region, which I'm pretty excited to see. I can honestly understand why you would cut Mankrik. I think it's a reasonable card in the deck. It's a nice way to just proactively spend your mana. But Mankrik kind of does the same thing as that when compared to Kazakus. You can just play it on curve and it's pretty powerful. Again, like I said, I haven't seen it in action, but the theory still does just make sense.
What I don't like about the Mankrik is cutting the Kazakus for it. I kind of like it as an additional tempo play. So if you're expecting a lot of aggro, maybe have Mankrik and Kazakus, so you can just sometimes curve through nicely into Kazakus, then into 5s and just win the game. That also sometimes just takes a game off handlock without you having to actually play the game as well. You just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and things explode. It is an extra 3 damage at the end that can be really, really important. Like, far more important than it sounds. It's like a 9th Garrote at the end of the game, which can matter against Armor Vendor, for instance. So there's some reason to play, especially in Americas, where we have seen players like Dreadeye bring the Armor Vendor build. It's just that extra Garrote. So suspect that's part of the reasoning. And like you said, part of the reasoning is it's just a good tempo option. But cutting Kazakus, out of the 2, Kazakus is so versatile. It allows you to have an accident early, like maybe you need an Ethereal Org Merchant to ping a minion off, and you can replace your spell damage a lot of the time with Kazakus. My preference, but I've laughed at Hacker and Monsanto's tech choices before. I've got to be careful.
Whew. All right, we're going to see some books flying, Neil, because that is one heck of a hand for Nalguidan. It looks both ways, and I think we'll be most happy with how this game progresses. I'm expecting probably coin Swindle, actually. I was going to say coin Octobot, but proccing it now while you have the combo active and then Octobot to follow up to discount as many cards as possible. Super clean.
Yep, and against Rogue, I'm not going to say guaranteed, because I'm sure there'll be some combination of one thieves and other nonsense that blow it up, but it's basically certain to proc at some point by your opponent.
Yeah, especially when your opponent's on the play. They can't even get a big prize plunderer to take it out very easily at all. This does present lnguagehackr with a pretty interesting turn. I think it's probably still just Shroud, but he could very conceivably go field contact step on this turn in order to set up for a more powerful field contact turn in the near future. But I do agree with him here that with the way his hand is currently stacked, honestly, field contact next turn doesn't even sound that powerful compared to what your opponent is likely to do.
It's a weird matchup as well in the mirror, because you have to always be aware that your opponent might just play 6 minions and start hitting you with them. Now, you don't usually get there with the tempo option. Not now. You used to a little bit when the decks did play Kazakus and Mankrik together.
Yeah.
You don't really do that now, but if you can do enough damage to get your opponent down to 24, you make your combo so much easier. If you get them down to 16, sorry, you make it so much easier that they just fall over the second you even attempt to combo. So this damage is relevant, and it can get there. Look at what Nalguidan's doing here. He's challenging lnguagehackr. You've got to answer this now, or you've lost the Hearthstone game.
Yeah, this is a little bit silly for Nalguidan. He's getting the absolute nut start. I really like that he's being liberal with his Ethereal Org Merchant. I think that's one of the first things you learn in the matchup, is that tempo is very often more important than the pure combo that you can do later on, because Rogue does really kind of struggle coming back from this without Octobot, because even though lnguagehackr has ways to clear up a pretty sizable chunk of this board, actually, he can very easily leave it with just the one thief and the Octobot left over. It's expensive, and he's not progressing his own game plan at the same time.
They're head-to-head. Kazakus in one hand, Mankrik in the other. We need like profiles on the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the screen now, explaining the tale of the tape here. 3 mana, Mankrik has lost his wife, is looking. 4 mana, Kazakus makes things out of clay. And
just imagine Mankrik being like, you know, I do other stuff. I have a SoundCloud as well, and all you think of me is that my wife's dead. Jeez, guys.
Mankrik, 10 foot tall. Kazakus, 1'9".
I'm going to choose to believe that.
I have no idea about my lore, but that's how tall they feel from the pictures.
Well,
Decision time, though. Do you want to go for a 5 or a 1, assuming you want to play Kazakus at all, which I think you probably do?
Probably, but I will say that honestly for Nalguidan, even though he's used one Ethereal Org Merchant, I'm actually most heavily looking at combo now, because even though I was just extolling the virtues of tempo in this matchup, he did get a lot of tempo on that turn, but he drew a lot of cards. With only 15 cards left in deck, there's a very real chance that he can combo his opponent on turn 6, I'm going to say. More likely turn 7, though.
Okay, I'll take a 7. I'll take 7.
Yeah, I think 7 is more reasonable, but possibly turn 6. Because he can just dump a lot of cards, like on this turn. Octobot, and then Shadow Step it in order to actually have it in hand for the following turn. That part's a little bit dubious, but basically you can just get rid of a bunch of cards here.
Yeah, and I think you want to put this... Yeah, okay, he's found a way to do it this way. You want to put this damage to face, because 24 is that first cutoff.
Okay.
Which is where you only need 8 lots of 3 damage to do lethal damage. So now he doesn't need this Guild Merchant. Guild Merchant? Org Merchant.
Yes.
To win the game. He only needs 1 spell damage now to combo through. That's quite important, and he still managed to maintain a good board while dumping the cards. And like you said, that's stopping lnguagehackr from progressing.
Indeed. Still just no Octobot available, which is... I mean, just look at the hand. It tells you everything you need to know. He's got 8 cards in hand, but is losing the game. That's never a situation you want to be in as a rogue, and it is almost entirely, of course, as I said, because of the lack of Octobot. So he can try and just go for something like Man-Crick Neophyte to put as many stats on board as possible. He could theoretically go with a small field contact turn, although I don't really like the look of that, to be honest.
Oddly, I preferred that. It's just get through a couple of cards and try and find a prep or something that does something. But yeah, this buys him a little bit of time. I just feel like you're now passing back to Nalguidan, like you've said about the combo. I feel like now it is a good time for him to get into combo mode, because he will plunder some prizes as he goes, most likely.
Yeah, and again, for Nalguidan on this turn, I still think it should be thinning your deck. Takes a higher priority than Kazakus. Prep, Shroud, I'm looking at pretty heavily on this turn. If you get an Octobot, then things get spicy. If you don't, then it's probably, I don't know, maybe you mess around with First Flame, Second Flame to clear up some of the board. Like, Nalguidan honestly doesn't have to be ahead on board. He's drawn his deck so much faster than his opponent. He just needs to make sure he's winning the game in the next 2 turns with combo.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, that makes taking the board a little bit more complicated with these prize plunderers, even though it's obvious that you want to drop it. You just got to be sure you have enough battle cries to cycle through your deck, because currently he doesn't have many in hand. He can't waste the Ethereal, and the prize plunderer is the only other one, apart from Kazakus, which is too expensive. So a little bit of work still to do here.
Yeah, he's still got a Pen Flinger in the deck, does Nalguidan, so that at least means that he does have continual battle cries to be able to complete the quest, but of course, as you said, you need to be playing spells along the meanwhile, and he doesn't have any preps left. But that's a big drop.
Turn, what he will do is play the Kazakus and take a 1, and try and get card draw 1.
Okay.
Play the Kazakus, it looks like a tempo play, so now lnguagehackr's got to be irritated and deal with it. Do that to get a 1 and set up lethal the turn after by getting a battle cry 1 drop. That would be my play.
That's fair. Yeah, I wonder though if you can just win this game with never having played Kazakus. Like my concern is just that it's maybe too slow, because if you go Shroud of Concealment, like Nalguidan really doesn't have that many minions left in deck. You have a reasonable shot of hitting Octobot, which would have stealth, so then you could just play that and I think very, very possibly win the game on turn 7.
Yep. Yeah, that works as well. I'm fine with either. I'm playing the Kazakus if I do play it though for that reason.
Okay, now things are getting a little spicy though, because while lnguagehackr is not threatening lethal on the following turn, he's not a million miles off. And as I think you are so fond of pointing out, and very correctly so, something that I forget, you don't need to do the full clean combo to do the combo. If you can just play Garrotes with like 15 cards left in deck, and you draw like 3 or 4 of them over the course of your draw train, that can very often still be lethal.
Yeah, and Nalguidan's first decision here is, how much of this do I have to tidy up? Well, you have to tidy up the field contact, or you lose the game. You don't need to do any face damage, but it would be nice to do 3 face damage. 16 is pleasant.
Oh, Secret Passage. Okay. I was going to say that it might be, again, Shroud and hope to hit Octobot on that turn, but he does just go, and he can thin some more cards from his deck here, namely Brain Freeze most likely, or maybe Brain Freeze Neophyte just to disrupt your opponent for a turn.
Yeah,
but the crucial thing is still no Octobot. It's not in hand, and it means that his mana is actually pretty tight next turn. He has a 3-mana Octobot, sorry, a 3-mana Field Contact in hand, I apologize, which means that his combo very possibly is actually a turn 8 affair rather than a turn 7 affair.
Yep. Why would you put that one in, not the other one? But you've got to put them both in to go below 16. If you're attacking with one, you've got to do both. 16's a key break point that he's going to give himself a chance for now.
That's true.
Then he doesn't need any spell damage, or 15, as it happens, is really good as well if he can get lots of spell damage.
So if Octobot comes off the top, then I think things get a fair bit simpler for Nalguidan. Then we're very possibly still looking at lethal because of the 1-mana Garrote in hand. It would go down to 0, of course. The Shadow Step to be able to replay an Orc Merchant, or very possibly even replay a an Octobot, if that's the necessary play. But in the meanwhile, lnguagehackr is seizing tempo. As I was saying, Nalguidan didn't have to gain board control to win this game, and lnguagehackr is taking advantage of that fact. He's saying you've completely ignored board for the last few turns, at least in terms of developing your own, and he's punishing his opponent with that. Step the neophyte to make it that little bit harder. This combo-based game plan, I think, is maybe looking just too slow for Nalguidan because he's just losing on board too heavily.
Yeah, being under this neophyte is a disaster for him. He won't be able to do it this turn. He's got to set up for next turn. And along the way, I think he's got to take down the neophyte, to be honest, in case he gets stepped again. Well, there's both steps gone. I haven't got the deck list. All right. So this is saying he is going to try and win it next turn. So I assume he'll take a 1 here and look for battle cry, draw a card, the nuts.
I guess. I mean, honestly, he just needs to stay alive, though, right? Like, I'm looking at lifesteal deal 3, almost more so than than drawing a card, just because he needs to survive. If there's no neophyte effect next turn, then it's much, much more likely to be lethal. But it's about living until that point.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. There's so much on the board. Spell damage is good, but you've got to remember it's not a battle cry if you take it. It's so easy just to assume it's a battle cry. Okay, took draw a card. Okay, cool.
Still no Octobot, man. This is getting so hairy.
Oh my goodness!
Ooh.
How much is this? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 16 total, 17 with a weapon.
The border on that Mancrick is a little bit funky, but that can attack as well, right?
Yes. Despite the fact there's a green sash wrapped around Saturn or something.
Yeah. So yeah, he's just shuffling in all the bleeds, going for as much damage as he can, but there is no neophyte infect. Nalguidan is not dead. 1 turn. lnguagehackr throws down the well played. He's expecting to die here, but Nalguidan still needs to pull it out the bag.
Right, let's have a look. I think it's probably guaranteed because of Shroud.
Ooh, that's a really big draw.
So this might be an occasion where you actually want to play your contact first.
Really?
Yeah, I think you've got enough.
With the Shadow Step, I think you're correct, because you go Octobot and then you play a minion to draw 1.
You're paying for my discretion.
Don't know what lnguagehackr is reacting to. His opponent did, in fact, have field contact, being 27 cards through his deck. The absolute lucker.
And he only needs 1 Garrote doing it this way, because he's going to get 4 4s, which means that you don't need the 2 mana.
What is he upset about? Is he saying his opponent had lethal in previous turns?
No, because he
annoyed
top-decked the Octo.
I guess, but I mean, he had 3 cards left in deck, right? Like,
no.
I don't know. It was honestly unlucky that it was still in the deck at that point, more so than lucky to top deck it. But I think here with Garrote available, or not even needed, actually, in the end, Nalguidan's calculated it, and lnguagehackr is upset. You know, he got very, very close to getting the lethal, but he simply just had the worst starting hand, of course, very sarcastically clapping to his opponent, because Nalguidan did get the absolute uber nut starting hand. I still think I disagree with one key turn in the middle from Nalguidan, where he decided to go Prize Plunger and Neophyte off the secret passage rather than stepping an Octobot. Whereas if he'd had that in hand, it could have cleaned up any ambiguity or any uncertainness that could have happened in those latter turns where he needed an Octobot off the top. But aside from that, I think Nalguidan made the switch at the perfect time from tempo to combo.
Yeah, absolutely, and you called it. I think I might have been Kazakus into a 5 and tried to spend a little bit more time messing around. But yeah, I think he could have got a Kazakus into a 1 earlier, but it looked really clean overall, again, apart from that turn that you highlighted where, hey, we're waiting for an Octobot all game, where that could have been solved much earlier on. But then maybe he felt at that time that he still needed a Shadow Step on his Org Merchant. Maybe he didn't want to waste the step.
And one final thing I will say is that for LnguageHackr, he did pick that shooting star over a Mask of Cthulhu, which at the time,
Yes.
I will admit, seemed reasonable. I think I probably would have made the same choice, but I was going to say that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. Honestly, that probably means it's wrong if I would have picked it as well.
I saw that, yeah.
At the end of the game, when he had prep left in hand, like he did have to go double Garrote, at the end in order to do that extra damage, but I think it very possibly would have ended up, if not a win, much, much closer and put more pressure on Nalguidan had that been a Mask of Cthulhu in the end. So while I think LnguageHackr is justifiably a bit upset, he wasn't without agency in that game.
We're in the Americas region now, Derek. We do not justify our players being upset. They are wrong. They should never be upset.
This is very liberating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The players are wrong, we're right. Because everything we say is pretty much irrefutable, because most of it is nonsense, and therefore you can't refute it.
Well, can't refute that.
See? Yeah. We win every time. TJ taught me so well. Handlock for Nalguidan.
Right.
He's got a Viper in there. We saw it earlier. It didn't work because he's up against 2 rods. But all it has cost him is 1 little mortal coil. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong indeed? To start things off here for LnguageHackr on the Shadow Priest, I've been very interested actually by Shadow Priest mulligans over the past couple days. What?
Just Nalguidan's hand. How much of this do you keep?
I think just the left-hand side, right? I mean, sure. double soul rend. Yeah, I guess that's probably pretty good. Yeah, sure. The Mortal Coil, I think I'm not necessarily so convinced on, but I guess it can get rid of a Divine Shield as well. So a full keep is probably just fine. But the one thing I was going to say is that I think what's very interesting is how different players treat their zero-cost minions. Because I believe we saw J4U earlier today or yesterday, I forget the timeline, keeping like double zero-cost and wriggling horror on Shadow Priest, which is something I didn't necessarily agree with, but was... just a very aggressive approach to the matchup. And here for LnguageHackr with double zero-cost minion and the 1-drop, like it is really aggressive, but at the same time, it's running out of gas really, really quickly.
Yeah, I think the more you play this deck, and I've played it more than I should have, I've got to admit, I didn't cycle there. That's interesting. The more you start putting your faith in the fact you are going to get 2 raised deads and you're going to get them first. Because you do have 4 ways of getting them. Obviously, you can draw them naturally, or you can get the Decepticon, so you're good.
Oh, there it is.
There he is, just showing exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
And with that in mind, you can keep that sort of weird, aggressive hand if you believe, I guess. And that comes... There is some maths involved, but it largely comes with feel, doesn't it? That sort of feeling. Am I going to get a raised dead on average? Not am I going to get one this game, because that would be nonsense, obviously.
And so here Nalguidan in a very interesting spot, because very similarly to what I was advocating for in the first game, this seems reasonable to hold off on Soul Rend, right? If you just go the quest tap here, you take a little bit of damage, sure, but that's not really your biggest concern against Shadow Priest. They don't have all too much aggression. Those are some terrible cards to lose off the discard as well, I will say. But the main point is you feel like you can go for it on the following turn after taking a bit of damage, and you get the Homunculus and whatever they play alongside it as well. But I think it's really smart to just go for the Soul Rend when it's okay, because they can't play Neophyte and they can't play Elusia. Had he held off for one more turn, Elusia off the top may have just ended the game on the spot. So I think it was very good recognition from Nalguidan to hold off on quest again until turn 4 and go for the Soul Rend in that very liberal manner.
Yeah, and how are you with keeping that hand and keeping the quest and then not playing the quest? Is it really that hard to win without it? I mean, you've got Flesh Giants and stuff hanging around against a deck that can't deal with them. Wonder if you should have just thrown the quest with that specific one hand.
I still think you keep it, but it's a reasonable point you raise. I just think the 6 healing that you gain over the course of the game is, if it's 1 mana heal 6 against Shadow Priest, that's good. Even if you look at it at nothing more than that, which obviously is more than that because you do have to factor in the Flesh Giants. But it's worth thinking about, I agree.
All right, last push here from LnguageHackr. He wins the game if his opponent doesn't have the other Soul Rend right now.
Yeah, and that looks like a touch of the Nathrazim as well. Oh, no, sorry, the Neophyte effect.
Under Neophyte.
Yeah,
but
which means it can't be a full clear. Problem is, though, for Nalguidan, I mean, again, he got the nutty hand, you know, make no mistake. But in terms of his remaining cards after this board is cleared here, sorry for covering up your reaction there, Language Hacker. I don't think that one would have been PG. I think I caught the hand gesture just in time. He doesn't have that much follow-up. With the Baron Scavengers both gone, the Bristleback is very nice to find, but it's not necessarily the insta-lock kind of hand that you can expect at this point in the game.
Yep, 2 reasons. One, you're about to see, and the other one is Voracious Reader. Oh, Language Hacker's thinking, because he does want to steal the piggy.
Oh.
Can he make this happen? That would be a super play.
So what happens if you get Neophyte? It's a very realistic play. You get you deal 2 damage, so they're down to 14, and you would end up with 9 power on board after the Elusia is factored in as well, which would not be lethal on the following turn, even with another hero power. And so, fair enough. He's holding off entirely at this point. I guess somewhat because of the fact that he saw double Baron Scavenger discarded.
Yep, that's definitely a thing. He's going to take a bit... I don't know if punish is the fair word to use to be absolutely fair here, because obviously it did make sense. He's aware of the risk he is taking, and he's going to get the worst outcome of that risk right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if this is a Bristleback on this turn. It very possibly is, because you do just still have to be afraid of Elusia as the one thing that can possibly mess you up.
It's Elusia, right? Like, you know it's Elusia.
Kind of, yeah.
Just look, yeah, I mean, okay, it could possibly be whatever the guy is you have to put in your deck. Yeah, Benedictus.
Yeah.
Could be him. But that's it. That's the 2 cards it could be.
Yeah, I mean, even then it would have been played on the last turn rather than hero power. So I think you can have a pretty solid read here. Freshman plus Elusia does, of course, mean that you can get, like, Neophyte Panthara, Bristleback, Goldshire Null, you know is going to be one off. But at this point, you have no choice. You just need to put forward as much attack as possible. And to be fair, Neophyte Panthara is pretty powerful. Oh, no, sorry, it's 1 mana off, given that he played the Freshman. So just Bristleback is still very, very strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it even lethal? I don't know if it is or not. I mean, it's basically lethal. Both Soul Rends gone, obviously.
Not necessarily.
10. It's only 10. No healing left in hand, though, for Nalguidan at the moment.
Yeah, he's got double Drain Soul still in the deck, double Raise Dead. He's got a Bristleback in there as well, a Backfire. Like, there are ways to draw through.
Oh, he just a decent second prize.
Pretty good, yeah.
Mainly because now if he stabilizes, that's a massive thing gone from Language Hacker's hand. Big pickup here for him.
That is massive.
And what's left in Nalguidan's deck? We must be... It's healing that he needs, obviously. 2 Drained Souls.
Yeah.
1 Bristleback.
Raise Dead can't even get him Bristleback because Language Hacker nicked it off the Elusia. You can get yourself a Goldshire Null, but obviously that's just going to turn into a failed student anyway. You have to tap. You get Tour Guide. Mana Feeder is your final hope, and even then, you can only get Bristleback as the 1 out, right?
Yeah, I think so. And even then, I haven't added it up. That might not even be an out at this point. But Backfire is not it. I think you just play the Backfire and go to game 5 when you've checked this out.
I feel for Nalguidan, this was horrible. He played well. I think he played the Soul Rend not too greedily at the exact right opportunity. Sequenced his turns very well. We can argue about the penultimate turn before Elusia, but again, I think he was just doing everything right and made it as resilient as possible against Elusia. And it was the 1 card he lost to. It was the card that Language Hacker had. You hate to see it, but that's how Elusia currently is, and that's what it does.
Yep, and that is 2 games apiece now. Language Hacker getting through with that priest. If you wonder why I was tipping my head on one side there, I was trying to work out which books were in the bookcase. Because we all know that anyone who has a bookcase in the background always places the books they want you to see to the
Correct.
front. So I was trying to work out what he'd done, but I couldn't work it out. Probably things like how to clap in an audience, and being angry for beginners. Volume 3. No. Anyway, it's going to be the Rogue versus the Warlock, which is pretty interesting. It's all about the Rogue trying not to get hit in the face with a giant, so saving brain freezes, and the Warlock trying to hit you in the face with a giant, so trying to go through things rapidly. There's a lot more to it, but that's the immediate crux of the matter for me.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we've been talking about a lot over in sunny old APAC with regards to this matchup, and something that I think players have been very much incorporating into their game plan, which I'd love to see this week, is the density of your threats against Rogue. It's all very well to just go, Null on turn 3 or 4, Neophyte on its own, Panthara on its own, whatever you may play. But the way you really dominate this matchup is, first of all, you find weapons so that you can cheat mana. That definitely helps. And then in one big turn, you play Scavengers, Giants, Gnolls, and then Neophyte as the lock to make sure that your minions are going to survive the turn. And that board, Rogue simply cannot deal with. And it's also very, very difficult for them to get the combo through a Neophyte aura as well. So really just setting up for one game-winning turn is what I want to see from Nalguidan in this matchup.
That makes a lot of sense, because you can deal as the Rogue with 2 big minions, with a couple of big plunderers. That happens all the time. It's not just a dream. But like you say, there's 2 giants and other bits and pieces flying around all over the place, and a scavenger maybe lurking about. You just die the next turn or the turn after. So, with that in mind, you have to go pretty fast as the Rogue.
I mean,
already.
Yeah, I feel like against the Warlock, you can't. I mean, you can get away with Tempo Octobot, but why would you? When you have Shroud, Mancrick, like he's got strong plays in the next few turns, and then you can just go Octo and proc it on the same turn. It just feels like a much safer line with, there's no real reward for tempoing out the Octobot is the point here.
Agree, absolutely. The reason he's going for the Mancrick is to put some pressure on. That is obvious, but what is not quite so obvious until you've played it a few times is that this really slows the Warlock down. We've talked about how it wants to make those big turns, but it can't do that if it's busy dealing with your stuff, and that buys you a bit of time to get on with it and do your own thing as the Rogue.
Oh, there we go. Fist pump from lnguagehackr. Yep, he has the juice. Octobot, Procket, Field Contact on turn 5 most likely, and he'll be down to 15 cards left in deck easily at that point, which means turn 7, turn 8, he's looking at the combo. Nalguidan himself, honestly, as soon as he sees the Field Contact come down, can start to map out where his position is in this game. So it's about getting his own win condition online before that point.
Oh my, and is there a way lnguagehackr can even work in a little bit of a flingaroo in here? Not easily, not sensibly.
Yeah, I don't think this is a swindle turn. I don't think it's swindle first here, I should say. It's very possibly a swindle turn, but you don't go swindle before Octobot. I think that's a little bit too greedy.
There's no way to reduce the pen flinger with the pen flinger. It's the awkward bit here. He'd love to hit this, then reduce the cost and do it again. Okay, he's going to wait.
He's going for it, though. Like I said, I thought this was a little, one tiny unit too greedy, whatever the unit of greediness may be.
It's the brood.
One Grood too greedy here for lnguagehackr. But to be fair, if he doesn't think he's under any pressure, Giants do cost 10 by default, which, contrary to what some people may lead you to believe, does actually make a big difference and gives him that one extra little bit of turn security. And it's not a play that I would have made, but lnguagehackr may just get the win because of it. Who knows? We'll see as the game progresses.
It wasn't me. So... Hacker there did have the decision whether to reduce the spell from the One Thief or the One Thief itself. And the reason he kept the One Thief itself in the end would be because he is planning one mighty old turn as soon as he gets the chance to. This Neophyte makes things awkward because this is the turn where he wants to play a lot of minions, but he is scared that Nalguidan will trade in the Neophyte and then raise dead it and play it again if he leaves minions on the board. That's what makes this turn pretty complicated. He wants to leave it alive and so it can't die.
Efficient is sufficient.
Okay.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Yep, once you've accepted the reality that that's probably not happening, this is now where you go.
Yeah, the question is just whether it's a contact turn as well here, which, on one side, yeah, it very possibly could be, right? You can play it with at least 4 other cards if you wanted to. But the problem is that you can't then play it with whatever else comes off the top. And one of the things he very possibly wants to do is like field contact and then end up with stepping the Octobot and reducing the cards he then draws afterwards so as to keep the card draw going yet further.
So I think he's planning out. So next turn he's going to draw, let's say, 8 cards. It might be 9 or 10. Quite
That's
easily,
reasonable.
Actually.
Yeah.
Gets down to 8, so he can expend this field contact as long as he finds that second Octo you're talking about. He's not going to die because Nalguidan's got to deal with his board. Nalguidan will be trying to slow Language Hacker down with raised deads and repeated neophytes at this point. So Language Hacker is going to take the chance next turn to have a massive turn while he can, if he gets the opportunity. Everything is a minion, apart from the 2 Brain Freezers, which he doesn't want to use anyway.
Yeah.
It's a really good time to have his first pop-off.
This is a big turn for Nalguidan, a big turning point, because I was looking kind of heavily at Soul Rend on this turn. I believe it would have just allowed for tap into Scavenger on the following turn, which I was kind of tempted by. But he holds off on it and goes for the Neophyte Aura now, which again, as I was talking about, has its benefits, of course, because you slow down a potential field contact turn from your opponent. But until he finds Raised Dead, he's without that Neophyte Aura, which is such an important component of those big pop-off turns.
Oh, what can he do? He wanted some freeze or some draw and got neither of those things. Potion will cost 5, of course, that's useless.
Yeah, Flame maybe helps you kill off, like, the tail end of a Scavenger to survive an extra turn. It's probably better than the others.
Such a weird phase of the game. You usually see who's in front, because if the Warlock is near-fighting onto an empty board, they tend to be behind. That's like they're staying alive. That's what's normally happening. Doesn't mean they'll lose, but they're the ones who are struggling.
You can't realistically be thinking of Swindle here, right, Language Hacker? You overdraw literally 1 trillion cards when you factor in the Pen Flinger as well. I think we gotta be a little bit more reasonable here. There's the Olgra, though, finally getting that reward from the Mancrick that I'd honestly long forgotten about at this point. And it makes a big deal. This board is that little bit harder to clean up now with... It's still being doable, admittedly. Soul Rend plus Touch of the Nathrazim, even through the Neophyte Aura, is doable. And,
that's a pass. If he does that, that's a pass. It's like, have another go. You've just drawn 10 cards.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out being 6 in the end, but whatever. That's 10 Americas round up here. That's a pass. You're sending it back and saying, have another go at it.
I mean, it is, but it's a pass that powers up your next turn drastically, right? Because then the Baron Scavenger is online. That's not to say that it's necessarily the play at all. We could very possibly see Rod on this turn, because Rod is a super powerful setup. If you can get Rod on this line and then backfire, it allows you to play 0 mana Scavengers, very possibly find those Raised Deads that I was talking about in order to replay the Neophytes, find those Giants. And honestly, the more I say it, the more I actually kind of like just going Rod, Drain Soul, or Touch of the Nathrazim on the field contact, just because it allows you to make a power play next turn. Whereas this, while it does set up the potential for Scavenger next turn, he loses some really important cards.
Yeah, and this is the turn now where Language Hacker needs to find the second field contact, and he's going to have a good old look around for it.
Yeah, he's got a very good shot at it. Just needs to make sure he's not overdrawing on this turn, which is fairly easy.
And then, to make sure he doesn't overdraw, he will probably take the Arcane Intellect, because that helps a lot. Yep, I love how that works out. It's so funny to me.
I was kind of looking at Cone of Cold there, actually, just to maybe buy yourself a turn, but I suppose Arcane
Intellect. I don't think he needs it. He's down to 7 cards in deck. I think he's got rid of the Neophytes. If Nalguidan's messing around with Neophytes, he's not killing you.
Yeah.
So I think that the next turn, Language Hacker isn't Neophyte, he's expecting to win. If he finds his field contact.
Okay, that is a non-necessary combo piece in the Org Merchant, because he still has enough backup with the Shadow Step to get the job done. But It is important that it was used. One card too many in hand, so Shadow Step, and then...
He's got the second flame.
I mean, yeah, but you don't really want to kill off your spell damage, do you? Yeah, okay. Like, that could have been good, right? Just to have a stealth spell damage on board. But either way.
He's good. He's got lethal next turn a million ways. Even I could lethal this next turn.
Well, here it is. Backfire now to try and draw those raised deads for the Neophytes. Try and find Giant. Try and find the other Scavenger. There it is. Finally, we are getting the power turn for Nalguidan. This is what I've been talking about for so long. This is where you finally swing the board decidedly and irreversibly in your favor. The question is just, was it one turn too late? We'll see after this play from Language Hacker.
Yeah, it's too late. He needed 2 Neophytes, I think, to even have a chance. I haven't mathed it, but with 1 Neophyte, you can just look at the casting costs in hand, because that's what's going to happen after the Octobot, and you can see that gets through his deck. Has he got a prep left?
No.
Okay, so I'm not going to nail 100% on this, but I think this is going to be lethal. Oh, he's not even going to go for it. He's just going to brain freeze so he doesn't die and do it next turn.
I don't think it is. That Garrote costs 3 in deck and 3 in hand. Like,
all right. Yeah, okay.
Even with an Octobot discount, that's still already too much mana because 3 for the Contact, 3 for the Octobot, and both Garrotes, that's 9 mana you've spent at that point. It's just too expensive.
So, yeah, you'd play the Field Contact after the bot on this occasion. I'm just going to work it out. 2, 4, 6.
I wonder.
Okay, you might need 9, to be fair. This is safe anyway. He's still got plenty of card draw for next turn.
Yep, it's just about making sure you don't get hit with a Neophyte next turn as well, which very possibly means you shouldn't kill the Neophyte because the second raised dead would be less likely to get it in hand. That was a little close. I can understand the benefits of it, but I think I probably would have ended on just freezing the Scavenger in that instance.
He knew exactly what was in the passage, of course, so he's able to do this. But yeah, a little bit scared of getting Neophyted here.
But first of all, of course, Nalguidan needs to find said remaining raised dead. He's still got some pretty powerful cards in deck. He's got himself Flesh Giant, raised dead. Even the Battlemaster, of course, represents surprise lethal. Means that Language Hacker cannot just leave minions willy-nilly on board. And there it is. That's the card he's looking for. Obviously, Giant would be huge as well, which can possibly come off the Mana Feeder. But having another Neophyte on this turn is so big if he can find it.
Yeah, I'm now going to maths it properly. While you're doing that, I'm just going to work out if we we ping it for 0, it goes to 2. You have 9 mana this time, I think.
Oh, he misses on both. Gets 2
pretty grim.
Garbage minions. I mean, I was honestly thinking he might get 2, let alone 0 that he did end up getting. That, I think, is the game-losing effect there for Nalguidan. He can draw into Flesh Giant as the best possible draw, which he hits. Possibly, he has 0 mana. He can heal up on this turn as well with the Bristleback, but none of this is going to matter because without a Neophyte, there is no doubt whatsoever that Language Hacker can get the win.
Yeah, of course he only needs to draw 3 cards. I think it was okay anyway. The Garrotes would have been 2, the Field Contact would have been 2, that's 6. The Octobot would have been 2, that's 8, and then something. All your minions would have cost 0. So I think he'd have got through anyway under 1 Neophyte. Under 2, maybe not so much. But yeah, needed a bit of a high. But there was a lot of Neophytes in that pool. I mean, he could have found 2. It wasn't beyond the realms at all.
Yeah, it was 3 that had died at that point, which is, I mean, to get 1, it's... My statistics is terrible, obviously, but like 50% at least feels pretty reasonable, right, with the amount that had died at that point. But either way, there it is. Language Hacker taking the win. What a back and forth series, man. It was an interesting one. There were definitely some plays I disagreed with, but I'm glad I got to see for my cast here. Overall, a very interesting game of Hearthstone where I never thought that any player was like punting the game. It was just differences in macro decision making that could have made the difference, but weren't obvious misplays at all. So a good win there for Language Hacker going through to the finals here of Week 5.
Yeah, and we've had 2 Monsanto wins, and lnguagehackr, his practice partner, or his I don't know, they're not teammates, but they're basically teammates, is now in a final. We could have 3 wins in 5 weeks from that pairing of players. lnguagehackr obviously representing Monsanto this time around. He's not wearing the Canada t-shirt, so maybe that's what brings the bad play. I don't know, but he looked pretty solid today, gets into that final, and it'd be curious to see who he's up against, because there's still Fled and Banterface waiting in the wings.
Oh, Fled, my boy. I'm holding out hope. I love his lineup. I've been a big fan of his play as well, and as I've said, his story throughout Grandmasters as well. But I mean, even then, you know, I was ragging on him a bit. I love lnguagehackr as well. I think he's a really cool guy and a very good Hearthstone player. I just, I hope he takes it as a sign of how, I don't know, how comfortable I feel with him, that I am allowing myself to be so cruel to him in the most English way possible. But Banterface, I've been talking to him a little bit recently. We've been talking about some of the plays throughout Grandmasters, and he's been a lot of fun to talk to, had a lot of very good insights as well. But Fled, like I say, he's been my prediction, and that's where my heart truly lies for the